It's time to drink water. It's time to drink water.
The only duty you have right now is to go to sleep. I know you're quite a few hours ahead of me. Hi, PJ. And I'm assuming that you just woke up. However, sleep. PJ. Once this song is over, we will begin.
Do you or do you not feel bonita?
I feel bonita.
Wonderful, because you look bonita.
Is this a sweet treat? Because it looks like a sweet treat and it smells like a sweet treat. So I'm going to try it and just see if it is a sweet treat.
Thank you, Yuna. Now, we will be reading chapters 9 through 12 today. And I hope those who are listening are able to have a nice sleep. Once this song is over, we will begin. time to pass for everyone to get in and to get comfy, let us begin. Chapter 9. Esme. Esme ate far too much pizza. Her mother told her pizza would be the death of her. She never imagined it might actually be true. The Scythe attack came less than a minute after she was given her slice, piping hot from the oven. It was the end of her school day, and the daily trials of 4th grade had exhausted her. Lunch had sucked. The tuna salad her mother had given was warm and mildly fermented by the time lunch rolled around. Not exactly appetizing. In fact, none of the food her mother packed for her hit high on the flavor scale. She was trying to get Esme to eat healthier, because Esme had a bit of a weight problem. And although her nanites could be programmed to speed up her metabolism, her mother wouldn't hear of it. She claimed it would be treating the symptom, and not the problem. "You can't solve everything by tweaking your nanites," her mother told her. "You need to learn self-control." Well, she could learn self-control tomorrow. Today she wanted pizza. Her favorite pizza place, Luigi's, was in the food court of the Fulcrum City Galleria, which was on her way home from school. Sort of. She was negotiating the cheese, trying to figure out how to take that first bite without burning the roof of her mouth, when the Scythes arrived. Her back was to them, so she didn't see them at first, but she heard them, or at least one of them.
Good afternoon, good people, he said. Your lives are about to change in a fundamental way.
Esme turned to see them. 4 of them. They were clad in bright robes that glittered. They looked like no one Esme had ever seen. She had never met a Scythe. She was fascinated. Until 3 of them pulled out weapons that glistened even more than their bejeweled robes, and the 4th pulled out a flamethrower.
This food court has been selected for gleaning,
their leader said, and they began their terrible mission. Esme knew what she had to do. Forgetting her pizza, she dropped beneath the table and crawled away. But she wasn't the only one. It seemed everyone had dropped and was scrambling on the floor. It didn't seem to faze the Scythes. She could see their feet through the crawling crowd. The fact that their victims were on all fours did not slow them down in the least. Now Esme began to panic. Hello, Gato. She had heard stories of Scythes who did mass gleanings, but until now she thought they were nothing but stories. Before her, she could see the robes of the Scythe in yellow, so she doubled back, only to find the Scythe in green closing in. Esme crawled through a gap in the tables in between 2 potted palms that the Scythe in orange had set on fire, and when she emerged on the other side of the large pots, she found herself with no cover. She was at the food concessions now. The man who had served her pizza was slumped over the counter, dead. There was a gap between the trash can and the wall. She was not a slim girl, so she thought the skinniest thoughts she could and squeezed her way into the gap. It was not much of a hiding space, but if she left it, she would be right in the line of fire. She had already seen 2 people trying to dart across the walkway, and both were taken down by steel crossbow arrows. She didn't dare move, so instead she buried her face in her hands. She stayed that way, sobbing, listening to the terrible sounds around her, until silence fell. Still she refused to open her eyes until she heard a man say, "Hello there." Esme opened her eyes to see the lead Scythe, the one in blue, standing over her. "Please," she begged. "Please don't glean me." The man held out his hand to her. "The gleaning is over," he said. "There's no one left but you. Now take my hand." Afraid to refuse, Esme reached out and placed her hand in his, and rose from her hiding place. "I've been looking for you, Esme," he said. Esme gasped when she heard her name from his mouth. Why would a Scythe be looking for her? The other 3 Scythes gathered around. None of them raised a weapon at her. "You'll be coming with us now," the Scythe in blue said. But my mother..." "Your mother knows. I've granted her immunity." "Really?" "Yes, really." Then the girl Scythe, in emerald green, handed Esme a plate. I believe this was your pizza? Esme took it. It was cool enough to eat now. Thank you. Come with us, said the Scythe in blue, and I promise you from this moment on, your life will be everything you've ever dreamed it could be. And so Esme left with the 4 sides, thankful to be alive, and trying not to think of the many around her who weren't. This was certainly not the way she imagined her day would go, but who was she to fight against something that rang so clearly of destiny? Was there ever a time people weren't plagued with boredom? A time when motivation wasn't so hard to come by? When I look at news archived from the age of mortality, it seems that people often had more reasons to do the things they did. Life was about forging time, not just passing time. And those news reports, how exciting they were, filled with all nature of criminal activity. Your neighbor could be a salesperson of illegal chemicals of recreation. Ordinary people would take life without the permission of society. Angry individuals would take possession of vehicles they didn't own, then lead law enforcement officers in dangerous pursuits on uncontrolled roadways. We do have the unsavories nowadays, but they do little more than drop occasional pieces of litter and move shop items to places they don't belong. No one rages against the system anymore. At most, they just glare at it a bit. Perhaps this is why the Thunderhead still allows a measured amount of economic inequality. It could certainly make sure that everyone had equal wealth, but that would just add to the plague of boredom that afflicts the immortal. Although we all have what we need, we're still allowed to strive for things that we want. Of course, no one strives like they did in mortal days, when the inequality was so great people would actually steal from one another, sometimes ending lives in the process. I wouldn't want the return of crime, but I do tire of we Scythes being the sole purveyors of fear. It would be nice to have competition. From the Gleaning Journals of Honorable Scythe Curie. Chapter 10. Forbidden Responses. Dude, I'm telling you, it's all anyone can talk about. Everyone thinks you're becoming a Scythe to take revenge on the school. On a mild day in March, on one of the rare afternoons that Scythe Faraday had allowed Rowan downtime, Rowan had gone to visit his friend Tiger, who had not splatted once in the past 3 months. Now they shoot hoops at a park just a few blocks away from Rowan's home, where he wasn't allowed to visit, and might not have even to if he were allowed. Rowan threw Tiger the ball. That's not why I accepted the apprenticeship. I know that, but you know that. But people will still believe whatever they want to believe. He grinned. Suddenly, I got all sorts of game because I'm your friend. They think I can get them access to your ring. Immunity talks, death walks. The thought of Tiger playing intercessor on his behalf almost made Rowan laugh. He could see Tiger milking that for all it was worth, probably charging people for the service. Rowan stole the ball and took a shot. He hadn't played since before moving in with the Scythe, but he found his arm, if not his aim. He was stronger than ever, and had endless stamina, all thanks to his Boktar training. So, when you get your ring, you are gonna give me immunity, right? Tiger took a shot and missed. It was clearly intentional. He was letting Rowan win. First of all, I don't know that he'll choose me to get the ring, and second, I can't just give you immunity. Tiger looked genuinely shocked. What? Why not? That's playing favorites. Isn't that what friends are for? A few other kids came to the court and asked if maybe they wanted to play a pickup game, but the second they saw Rowan's armband, they had a change of heart. No worries, the oldest one said. It's all yours. It was exasperating. No, we can all play. Nah, we'll go somewhere else. I said we can all play, Rowan insisted, and he saw such fear in the other kids' eyes. He felt ashamed for pushing. Yeah, sure, said the other kid. He turned to his friends. You heard the man. Play. They took to the court in earnest, and in earnest played to lose, just as Tiger had. Was this how it would always be? Was he now such an intimidating presence that even his own friends would be afraid to truly challenge him? The only one who ever challenged him in any way now was Citra. Rowan quickly lost interest in the game and left with Tiger, who found it all amusing. Dude, you're not lettuce anymore. You're definitely Nightshade. You're the mean greens now. Tiger was right. If Rowan had told these other kids to get down on all fours and lick the pavement, they would have. It was heady and horrible, and he didn't want to think of it. Rowan didn't know what possessed him to do what he did next. Frustration at his isolation, maybe? Or maybe just wanting to bring a sliver of his old life into his new one. Want to come over and see the Scythe's place? Tiger was a little dubious. Will he mind? He's not there, Rowan told him. He's gleaning in another city today. He won't be home till late. He knew that Scythe Faraday would blow brainstem if he found out Rowan had someone over. It made the desire to do it even more enticing. He had been so good, so obedient. It was about time he did something he wanted to do. When they arrived, the house was empty. Citra, who was also granted a free afternoon by Scythe Faraday, was out. He had wanted Tiger to meet her, but then thought, what if they happen to like each other? What if Tiger charms her? He always had a way with girls. He'd even convinced a girl to splat with him once, just so he could say, girls fall for me, literally. It'll be like Romeo and Juliet, he had told her, except we get to come back. Needless to say, the girl's parents were livid, and after she was revived, they forbade her from seeing Tiger ever again. Tiger shrugged it off. What can I say? Her life is a tale told by idiots, which Rowan believed was a very bad Shakespearean misquote. The thought of Citra falling for Tiger, even just figuratively, made Rowan a bit nauseated. This is it? Tiger said as he looked around the place. It's just a house. What'd you expect, a secret underground lair? Actually, yeah. Or something like it. I mean, look at this furniture. I can't believe he makes you live in this hellhole. It's not so bad. Come on, I'll show you something cool. He took Tiger to the weapons den, which, as expected, Tiger found truly impressive. Dude, this is so edge. I've never seen so many knives. And all those guns? I've only ever seen pictures. He took a pistol off the wall and looked down the barrel. Don't do that. Calm down. I'm a splatter, not a blaster. Rowan took it away from him anyway, and in the time it took him to put it on the wall, Tiger had taken down a machete and was swishing it through the air. Think I could borrow this? Absolutely not. Come on, he's got so many, he'd never miss it. Tiger, Rowan knew, was the very definition of bad idea. That had always been part of the fun of being his friend, but now that was a major liability. Rowan grabbed Tiger's arm, kicked him behind the knee to buckle his leg, and spun him to the ground, all in a single Bokatar move. Then he held Tiger's arm at an unnatural angle, with just enough leverage for it to hurt. Dude, what the hell? Tiger said through gritted teeth. Drop the machete. Now. Tiger did, and just then he heard the front door being opened. Rowan let go. Be quiet, he said in a power whisper. He peeked out the door, but couldn't see who had just come in. Stay here, he told Tiger, then slipped out to find Citra closing the front door behind her. She must have been running, because she wore a workout outfit that was much more revealing than Rowan needed at the moment. It drained far too much blood from his brain, so he focused on her apprentice armband to remind himself that hormonal responses were strictly forbidden. Citra looked up and gave him an obligatory greeting. Hey, Rowan. Hey. Something wrong? No. Why are you just standing there? Where should I be standing? She rolled her eyes and went into the bathroom, closing the door. Rowan slipped back into the weapons den. Who is it? Asked Tiger. Is that what's her name? I want to meet your competition. Maybe she'll give me immunity. Or something else. No, Rowan told him. It's Scythe Faraday, and he'll glean you on the spot if he finds you here. Suddenly, Tiger's bravado evaporated. Oh, crap, what are we gonna do? Calm down, he's taking a shower. As long as you're quiet, I can get you out. They came into the hallway, and sure enough, the sound of a shower hissed behind the closed bathroom door. He's washing off the blood? Yeah, there sure was a lot of it. He led Tiger to the front door, and did everything short of pushing him out. After being an apprentice for nearly 3 months, Citra couldn't deny that she wanted to be chosen by Scythe Faraday to receive the ring. As much as she resisted, as much as she told herself this was not the life for her, she had come to see its importance, and how good a Scythe she would be. She had always wanted to live a life of substance and make a difference. As a Scythe, she would. Yes, she would have blood on her hands, but blood can be a cleansing thing. It was certainly treated as such in Bokatar. Citra found Black Widow Bokatar to be the most physically demanding thing she had ever done. Their trainer was Scythe Yingxing, who used no weapons but his own hands and feet to glean. He had taken a vow of silence, and it seemed every Scythe had surrounded something of themselves, not because they had to, but because they chose to, as a way to pay for the lives they took. "What would you give up?" Rowan once asked Citra. The question made her uncomfortable. "If I become a Scythe, I'm giving up my life, aren't I? I think that's enough." "You're also giving up a family," Rowan reminded her. She nodded, not wanting to speak to it. The idea of having a family was so far off to her. The idea of not having one felt equally distant. It was hard to have feelings about something she was years away from even considering. Besides, such things had been kept far from her mind during Bokatar. One's mind had to be clear. Citra had never taken any sort of martial art before. She had always been a non-contact sport kind of girl. Track, swimming, tennis, any sport that had a clear lane or line or net between her and her opponent. Bokatar was the antithesis of that. Hand-to-hand, body-to-body combat. Even communication was entirely physical in the class, as their mute instructor would correct their positions as if they were action figures. It was all mind and body, without the brash mediation of words. There were 8 in their class, and although their instructor was a Scythe, Citra and Rowan were the only apprentices. The others were junior Scythes in the first year of their Scythehood. There was one other girl who made no overtures of friendship to Citra. The girls were given no special treatment, and were expected to be every bit the equal of the boys. Sparring was punishing in Bokatar. Each match began simply enough, with a ritualistic strutting around the circle, the two combatants physically taunting each other in a sort of aggressive dance. Then things got serious and brutal. All nature of kicks and punches and body slams. Today, she sparred against Rowan. He had more finesse to his moves, but she had the advantage of speed. He was stronger, but he was also taller, which was not an asset. Citra's lower center of gravity made her more stable. All taken into account, they were evenly matched. She spun and gave Rowan a powerful kick to the chest that almost took him down. "Good one," Rowan said. Scythe Yinzing zipped his own lip to remind them that there was no crosstalk during combat. She came at him from his left, and he countered so quickly she had no idea where his hand had come from. It was as if he suddenly had 3. She was thrown off balance, but only for an instant. She felt heat where his hand had connected with her side. "There'll be a bruise," she grinned. "He'll pay for that." She feinted left again, then came at him from the right with the full force of his body. She took him down and had him pinned, but it was as if gravity reversed, and suddenly she realized he had turned the tables. Now he was on top, pinning her. She could have flipped him again. She had the leverage, but she didn't do it. She could feel his heartbeat now as if it were beating in her own chest, and she realized she wanted to feel that a little longer. She wanted to feel it more than she wanted to win the match. That made her angry. Angry enough to pull away from his grip and put some space between them. There was no lane line, no net, nothing to keep them apart but the wall of her will. But that wall was losing bricks. Scythe Yinzing signaled the end of the match. Citra and Rowan bowed to each other, then took their places on opposite sides of the circle, as 2 others were called up to spar. Citra watched intently, determined not to give Rowan a single glance. We are not the same beings we once were. Consider our inability to grasp literature and most entertainment from the mortal age. To us, the things that stirred mortal human emotions are incomprehensible. Only stories of love pass through our post-mortal filter, and even then, we are baffled by the intensity of longing and loss that threatens those mortal tales of love. We could blame it on our emo nanites limiting our despair, but it runs far deeper than that. Mortals fantasized that love was eternal, and its loss unimaginable. Now we know that neither is true. Love remained mortal, while we became eternal. Only Scythes can equalize that, but everyone knows the chance of being gleaned in this, or even the next millennium, is so low as to be ignored. We are not the same beings as we once were. So then, if we are no longer human, what are we? From the Gleaning Journal of Honorable Scythe Curie. Chapter 11. Indiscretions. Citra and Rowan were not always together at gleanings. Sometimes Scythe Faraday took just one of them. The worst gleaning Citra witnessed took place in early May, just a week before Vernal Conclave, the first of the 3 conclaves she and Rowan would attend during their apprenticeship. Their quarry was a man who had just turned the corner and reset his age to 24. He was at home having dinner with his wife and 2 kids, who seemed to be around Citra's age. When Scythe Faraday announced who they had come for, the family wept, and the man slipped off into a bedroom. Scythe Faraday had chosen a peaceful bloodletting for the man, but that was not what happened. When Citra and the Scythe entered the room, he ambushed them. The man was in peak condition, and in the arrogance of his new rejuvenation, he rejected his gleaning and fought the Scythe, breaking his jaw with a vicious punch. Citra came to his aid, trying some Boktar moves she had learned from Scythe Yinzing, and quickly learned that applying a martial art is much different from practice in a dojo. The man swatted her away and advanced on Faraday, who was still reeling from his injury. Citra leapt on him again, clinging to him, for the moment giving up anything beyond eye-gouging and hair-pulling. It distracted him just long enough for Scythe Faraday to pull out a hunting knife he had concealed in his robe, and slit the man's throat. He began gasping for air, his hands to his neck trying futilely to hold back the flow of blood. And Scythe Faraday, holding a hand to his own swelling jaw, spoke to him, not with malice, but with great sorrow.
Do you understand the consequences of what you've done?
The man could not answer. He fell to the ground quivering, gasping. Citra thought death from such a wound would be instantaneous, but apparently not. She had never seen so much blood.
Stay here,
the Scythe told her.
Look upon him kindly, and be the last thing he sees.
Then he left the room. Citra knew what he was going to do. The law was very clear as to the consequences of running from or resisting one's gleaning. She couldn't close her eyes, because she was instructed not to. But if there was a way, she wished she could have closed her eyes. Closed her ears, because she knew what she was about to hear from the living room. It began with pleas from the woman begging for the lives of her children, and the children sobbing in despair.
Do not beg,
Citra heard the Scythe say sharply.
Show these children more courage than your husband did.
Citra kept her gaze fixed on the dying man's eyes until they emptied fully of life. Then she went to join Scythe Faraday, steeling herself for what was to come. The 2 children were on the sofa, their sobs having degraded into tearful whimpers. The woman was on her knees, whispering to them, comforting them.
Are you quite done?
The Scythe said impatiently. As the woman rose, at last the woman had risen. Her eyes were tearful, but they no longer seemed pleading. Do what you have to, she said.
Good,
said the Scythe.
I applaud your fortitude. Now, as it happens, your husband did not resist his gleaning.
Then he touched his swelling face.
However, my apprentice and I had an altercation, resulting in these wounds.
The woman just stared at him, her jaw slightly unhinged. So was Citra's. The Scythe turned to Citra and glared at her.
My apprentice shall be severely disciplined for fighting with me.
Then he turned back to the woman.
Please kneel.
The woman fell to her knees. Not so much a kneel as a collapse. Scythe Faraday held out his ring to her.
As is customary, you and your children shall receive immunity from gleaning for 1 year henceforth. Each of you, please kiss my ring.
The woman kissed it again and again and again. Very well, Yuna. Water time. Water has been drank. Thank you for for not redeeming it. It's very loud. The Scythe said little after they left. They rode a bus because whenever possible, the Scythe avoided use of a public car. He saw it as an extravagance. When they got off at their stop, Citra dared to speak. "Shall I be disciplined for breaking your jaw?" Citra knew it would be healed by morning, but the healing nanites were not spontaneous. He still looked pretty awful. "You will speak to no one of this," he told her sternly. "You will not even comment on it in your journal. Is that clear? The man's indiscretion shall never be known." "Yes, Your Honor." She wanted to tell him how much she admired him for what he had done, choosing compassion over obligation. There was a lesson to be learned in every gleaning, and today was one she would not soon forget. The sanctity of the law, and the wisdom to know when it must be broken. Citra, try as she might to be a stellar apprentice, was not immune to indiscretion herself. One of Citra's nightly chores was to bring Scythe Faraday a glass of warm milk before bed. "As in my childhood, warm milk soothes the edges of the day," the Scythe had told her. "I have, however, dispensed with the cookie that once came with it." The thought of a Scythe having milk and cookies before bed bordered on absurd to Citra, but she supposed even an agent of death would have guilty pleasures. Quite often, however, when a gleaning had been difficult, he would fall asleep before she came into his room at the appointed time with the milk. In those cases, she would drink it herself, or give it to Rowan, because Scythe Faraday made it clear that nothing in this household was ever wasted. On the night of that awful gleaning, she lingered in his room a bit longer. "Scythe Faraday," she said gently, then said it again. No response. She could tell by his breathing that he was out. There was an object on his nightstand. In fact, it was there every night. His ring. It caught the oblique light spilling in from the hallway. Even in the dim room it glittered. She downed the glass of milk and set it on the nightstand, so that in the morning the Scythe would see that she brought it and that it hadn't been wasted. Then she knelt there, her eyes fixed on the ring. She wondered why he never slept with it, but it felt that asking would be some sort of intrusion. When she received hers, if she received hers, would it retain the solemn mystery that it held for her now? Or would it become ordinary to her? Would she come to take it for granted? She reached forward, then drew her hand back, then reached forward again and gently took the ring. She turned it in her fingers so it caught the light. The stone was big, almost the size of an acorn. It was said to be a diamond, but there was a darkness in its core that made it different from a simple diamond ring. There was something in the core of that ring, but no one knew what it was. She wondered if even the Scythes themselves knew. The center wasn't exactly black. It was a deep discoloration that looked different depending on the light, the way a person's eyes sometimes do. Then, when she glanced at the Scythe, she could see that his eyes were open and watching her. She froze, knowing she was caught, knowing that putting the ring down now wouldn't change that. "Would you like to try it on?" Scythe Faraday asked. "No," she said. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have touched it." "You shouldn't have, but you did." She wondered if he had been awake the whole time. "Go ahead," he told her. "Try it on. I insist." She was dubious, but did as she was told, because in spite of what she had told him, she did want to try it on. It felt warm on her finger. It was sized for the Scythe, so it was too large for her. It was also heavier than she imagined. "Do you worry it will ever be stolen?" she asked. "Not really. Anyone foolish enough to steal a Scythe's ring is quickly removed from the world, so they cease to be a problem." The ring was getting noticeably cooler. "It is a covetable object, though. Don't you agree?" the Scythe said. Suddenly, Citra realized the ring wasn't just cool, it was freezing. The metal, in a matter of seconds, had grown white with frost, and her ring was in such intense pain from the cold, she cried out and pulled the ring from her hand. It flew across the room. Not only was her ring severely frostbitten, so were the fingers that had pulled it free. She bit back a whimper. She could now feel warmth flowing through her body as her healing nanites released morphine. She became woozy, but forced herself to stay alert. A security measure I installed myself, the Scythe said. A micro-coolant chip in the setting. Let me see. He turned on the nightstand light and grabbed her hand, looking at her ring finger. The flesh at the joint was pale blue and frozen solid. In the age of mortality, you might have lost the finger. But I trust your nanites are already mending the damage. He let go of her hand. You'll be fine by morning. Perhaps next time you'll think before touching things that don't belong to you. He retrieved his ring, set it back on the nightstand, then handed her the empty glass. From now on, Rowan will bring me my evening milk, he said. Citra deflated. I'm sorry I disappointed you, Your Honor. You're right, I don't deserve to bring you your milk. He raised an eyebrow. You misunderstood. This is not a punishment. Curiosity is human. I merely allowed you to get it out of your system. I have to say, it took you long enough. Then he gave her a little conspiratory grin. Now let's see how long it takes Rowan to go for the ring. Sometimes, when the weight of my job becomes overwhelming, I begin to lament all the things lost when we conquered death. I think about religion and how once we became our own saviors, our own gods, most faiths became irrelevant. What must it have been like to believe in something greater than oneself, to accept imperfection and look to a rising vision of what we could never be? It must have been comforting. It must have been frightening. It must have lifted people from the mundane, but also justified all sorts of evil. I often wonder if the bright benefit of belief outweighed the darkness its abuse could bring. There are the tone cults, of course, dressed in sackcloth and worshipping sonic vibrations, but like so many things in our world, they seek to imitate what once was. Their rituals are not to be taken seriously. They exist merely to make the passing time feel meaningful and profound. Lately, I've been preoccupied with a tone cult in my neighborhood. I went into their gathering place the other day. I was there to glean one of the cult's congregants, a man who had not yet turned his first corner. They were intoning what they called the resonant frequency of the universe. One of them told me that the sound is alive, and that harmonizing with it brings inner peace. I wonder, when they look at the great tuning fork that stands as the symbol of their faith, if they truly believe it to be a symbol of power, or if they are just joining in a communal joke. From the Gleaning Journal of Honorable Scythe Curie. Chapter 12. No Room for Mediocrity. The Scythedom is the world's only self-governing body, said Scythe Faraday. While the rest of the world is under Thunderhead's rule, the Scythedom is not, which is why we hold conclaves 3 times a year, to resolve disputes, renew policy, and mourn the lives we've taken. Vernal Conclave, which was to take place during the first week of May, was less than a week away. Rowan and Citra had studied enough of the structure of the Scythedom to know that all 25 regions of the world held their conclave on the same day, and that there were currently 321 scythes in their region, which encompassed the heart of the North American continent. The Mid-American Conclave is an important one, Scythe Faraday had told them, because we tend to set the trend for much of the world. There's an expression, as goes Mid-America, so goes the planet. The Grand Slayer Scythes and the Global Conclave always have their eyes on us. Scythe Faraday explained that each conclave they would be tested. I do not know the nature of this first test, which is why you need to be as prepared as possible in all aspects of your training. Rowan found that he had a million questions about conclave, but kept them to himself. He let Citra do all the asking, mainly because the questions irritated Scythe Faraday, and he had never answered them. You'll find out all you need to know when you get there, the Scythe told them. For now, all your attention must be on your training and your studies. Rowan had never been an exceptional student, but that was by design. To be either too good or too bad drew attention. As much as he hated being the lettuce, it was his comfort zone. If you apply yourself, I have no doubt you could be at the top of your class, his science teacher had told him after getting the highest grade on his midterm last year. He had done it just to see if he could. Now that he knew, he saw no great need to do it again. There were many reasons, not the least of which was his own ignorance about scythes in those days before his apprenticeship. He assumed that being a stellar student would make him a target. Supposedly a friend of a friend was gleaned at 11 because he was the smartest kid in 5th grade. It was nothing more than an urban myth, but Rowan believed it just enough that it kept him from wanting to stand out. He wondered if other kids held back for fear of being gleaned. He had little experience with being so studious. He found it exhausting, that there was more than just poison chemistry, postmortal history, and journaling. And there was metallurgy as it applies to weapons, the philosophy of morality, the psychology of immortality, and the literature of the Scythedom, from poetry to the wisdom found in famous Scythe journals, and of course, the mathematical statistics that Scythe Faraday relied upon so heavily. There was no room for mediocrity, especially now with the conclave coming up. Rowan did ask him one question about conclave. Will we be disqualified if we fail the test? Faraday took a moment before answering. No, he told them, but there is a consequence. Although he would not tell them what that consequence was.
ZZZZ.
Rowan concluded that not knowing it was more terrifying than knowing. But just a few days before conclave, he and Citra stayed up late studying in the weapons den. Rowan found himself dozing, but was quickly awakened when Citra slammed a book. I hate this, she announced. Cerubian, aconite, conium, polonium, the poisons are all running together in my head. That would sure make a person die faster, Rowan said with a smirk. She crossed her arms. Do you know your poisons? We're only supposed to know 40 by conclave, he pointed out. And do you know them? I will, he told her. What's the molecular formula for tetrodotoxin? He wanted to ignore her, but found he couldn't back away from a challenge. Perhaps a bit of her competitive nature was rubbing off on him. C11H17N3O6. Wrong, she said, pointing a finger at him. It's 08, not 06. You fail. She was trying to rile him up, so she wouldn't be the only one riled. He wasn't going to oblige. Guess so, he said, and tried to return to his studies. Aren't you the least bit worried? He took a breath and closed his book. When Faraday first began teaching them, Rowan found the use of actual old school books very off-putting. But over time, he'd learned there was something very satisfying to the turning of pages, and, as Citra had already discovered, the emotional catharsis of slamming a book shut. Of course I'm worried. But here's the way I look at it. We know they won't disqualify us, and we already know we can't be gleaned. If we'll have 2 more chances to make up for any screw-ups before one of us is chosen. Whatever the consequence of failing the first round of tests, if either of us fail, we'll deal with it. Citra slumped in her chair. I don't fail, she said, but didn't sound too convinced of it. There was this pouty look on her face that made Rowan want to smile, but he didn't because he knew that would infuriate her. He actually liked how she would get infuriated, but they had too much work to do to indulge in emotional distraction. Rowan put away his toxicology book and pulled out his volume on weapons identification. They were required to be able to identify 30 different weapons, how to wield them, and their detailed history. Rowan was more worried about that than the poisons. He spared a glance at Citra, who had noticed the glance, so he tried not to look at her again. Then out of nowhere she said, I would miss you. He looked up, and she looked away. How do you mean? I mean that if disqualification was part of the rules, I'd miss having you around. He considered reaching out to take her hand, which rested gently on the table. But the table was big, and her hand was too far away to do anything other than be insanely awkward. Then again, even if they had sat closer, it would be an insane thing to do. But it's not part of the rules, he said. which means that no matter what, you're stuck with me for 8 more months. She grinned. Yeah, I'm sure I'll be really sick of you by then. It was the first time it occurred to Rowan that she might not hate him as much as he thought she did. The quota system has worked for over 200 years, and although it fluctuates region to region, it makes it crystal clear what each Scythe's responsibility to the world is. Of course, it's all based on averages. We can go days or even weeks without gleaning, but we must meet our quota before the next conclave. There are those eager ones who glean early and find themselves with little to do as conclave draws near. There are those who procrastinate and have to hurry towards the end. Both those approaches lead to sloppiness and unintentional bias. I often wonder if the quota will ever change, and if so, how much. Population growth is still off the charts, but it's balanced by the Thunderhead's ability to provide for an ever-increasing population. Renewable resources, subsurface dwellings, artificial islands, and all without there ever being any less green or a sense of overcrowding. We have mastered this world, and yet protected it in a way that our forefathers could scarcely have dreamed. But all things are limited. While the Thunderhead does not interfere with the Scythedom, it just suggests the number of scythes there should be in the world. Currently, there are approximately 5 million people gleaned per year worldwide, a tiny fraction of the death rate in the Age of Mortality, and nowhere near enough to balance population growth. I shudder to think how many more scythes it would take, and how many gleanings would be required, if we ever needed to curb population growth altogether. From the Gleaning Journal of Honorable Scythe Curie. That is the end of our book tonight. As usual, thank you all for joining me. To those who are asleep, have very happy dreams. To those who are awake, drink some water. And then, I will see you all in the next one. Later. Thank you, Yuna.